Welcome back, everyone, to The Deep Dive. Today, we're going to try to untangle a seriously complex legal situation.
Oh, yeah.
We're diving deep into the accusations against Sean Diddy Combs.
Over 120 lawsuits, allegations going back decades.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack. And just to get this out there right away, we're talking about serious accusations from sexual assault to sex trafficking, some involving minors.
Right. And, he's currently incarcerated awaiting trial.
Yeah.
It's a high-stakes situation. I mean, if convicted, he's facing a life sentence.
I think what's hitting me first is just the sheer volume of these lawsuits. We're not talking about a couple of disgruntled individuals here.
I know. It's a pattern. 120-plus accusers.
Exactly. And they're coming from all different points in time.
Yeah, over 20 years' worth of allegations. You can't just dismiss that.
No, you can't. And then you have to consider the different types of legal actions going on here. We've got civil suits. We've got criminal charges. Can you break down the distinction between those two for us?
Sure. I mean, in the simplest terms, a civil lawsuit, that's when someone's seeking financial compensation for damages. Imagine it like suing someone after a car accident.
Okay, yeah.
Criminal charges, those are brought by the government.
Right.
And that can lead to jail time, fines, things like that.
So we're looking at both of those potentially happening with Diddy.
That's right. He's facing those civil lawsuits from the alleged victims. And then on top of that are the federal sex trafficking charges. That's the criminal side of this whole thing.
Okay, to get a handle on this, I think we need a timeline.
Yeah.
When did these allegations first start surfacing?
There have always been whispers, rumors circulating for years.
Yeah.
But things really blew up in October 2023. That's when attorney Tony Buzbee enters the picture.
Oh, yeah. Tony Buzbee, he's been involved in some high-profile cases before.
He's no stranger to the spotlight. And he came out representing 120 accusers.
Oh, wow. Well, what?
And that's when it became impossible to ignore.
120. That's a staggering number.
Yeah.
And Buzbee's been very vocal. It's not just about the allegations themselves.
No, he's pointed a finger at what he calls a culture of enabling within the music industry, saying, these lawsuits are going to expose those who look the other way while this was allegedly going on.
That's a huge implication. If he's right, it suggests a much wider problem here.
Absolutely. Systemic acceptance of this kind of behavior.
So this is more than just Diddy. It's about potentially a whole system that needs to be looked at.
And this case could trigger a much-needed reckoning.
About power, consent, accountability.
All of it. The music industry might have to take a long, hard look in the mirror.
All right, we've established the timeline, the massive scope of these accusations. To really grasp what we're dealing with, I think we need to look at some specific examples.
Yeah, we need to get into the details.
What are some of the most disturbing or compelling cases that stand out?
There are accusations involving parties, claims of drugging and assault.
Okay.
There are allegations coming out of the Making the Band auditions.
Wow, so a lot of different settings and circumstances.
Yeah, and some of these are particularly unsettling. There's a lawsuit alleging Combs dangled a fashion designer off a balcony during a fit of rage.
Oh my gosh.
Another claims he assaulted a 17-year-old model at a party out in the Hamptons.
Okay.
And maybe most disturbing of all, there are accusations involving minors.
Minors?
Yeah. One plaintiff claims she was just 9 years old when the alleged assault took place.
Wow. If that's true, that is beyond disturbing.
It's a serious accusation, and it makes you wonder how widespread was this behavior.
Okay, so we've got this immense legal battle, civil and criminal charges, a huge number of accusers, and these horrifying allegations. Where does Diddy himself stand on all of this? How has he responded?
So far, both Combs and his legal team have been consistent. They've denied all allegations outright.
Oh, yeah.
Their stance is he's never sexually assaulted anyone, adult or minor, man or woman.
So they're claiming complete innocence across the board.
They're saying it's a massive conspiracy, maybe motivated by financial gain.
It's a bold claim, given how many people are coming forward.
But it is important to remember, innocent until proven guilty. That's how our system works.
Exactly. It'll be up to the courts to determine what really happened. Now, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there's one more legal concept we need to talk about. The statute of limitations.
Right. That can get tricky.
It is tricky. Can you explain what that is and how it applies here?
Basically, the statute of limitations is a time limit.
Okay.
It's how long someone has to file a lawsuit or bring charges. Varies by the type of crime.
Got it.
But the idea is, over time, evidence can become less reliable. Wouldn't be fair to prosecute someone decades after an alleged offense.
Makes sense. But how does that work with Diddy's case? Some of these accusations go way back.
You're right. And this is where things get interesting. New York State They recently passed a law, temporarily lifted the statute of limitations for certain sexual assault cases.
So that means victims who might have been barred from seeking legal action because too much time had passed.
Oh, they have a chance.
That explains why we're seeing so many lawsuits coming forward now.
Exactly. The door has swung open for many of his alleged victims.
Okay, so we've got the timeline, the accusers, the different types of accusations. We've got Diddy's denials and this whole statute of limitations issue. What I'm still trying to wrap my head around is just the sheer scale. 120 lawsuits.
It's unheard of.
It is. It's not just about one man's actions. It's about the potential for systemic change in an entire industry.
The music industry might have to face some hard truths.
About power, consent, accountability.
Right.
And while this is all going on, Curtis 50 Cent Jackson has announced he's making a docuseries about all of this, with proceeds going to support sexual assault victims.
Yeah, that adds a whole other dimension. 50 Cent doesn't shy away from controversy.
So before we jump into that, let's do a quick recap for our listeners. We're dealing with an avalanche of lawsuits, accusations ranging from assault to sex trafficking. The legal system is trying to sort through all of this. Celebrity and power dynamics are at play.
Yeah, we've got a lot to unpack here. I think this case is going to bring up tough questions. Questions about consent, power, about the culture in the music industry, questions that aren't going away anytime soon. Let's take a closer look at some of the specific lawsuits, like the ones Buzbee filed back in October 2023. 7 lawsuits on behalf of these unnamed plaintiffs. One of them, this woman from Alabama, she claims she was 13 years old back in 2000. Says she met an associate of Combs, got invited to a Video Music Awards after party.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she claims that at this party, she was given a drink that was drugged and then repeatedly raped by Combs and another male celebrity. She also alleges that a female celebrity, neither of them named in the lawsuit, was present and watched until she was able to get away.
A 13-year-old child. That's absolutely horrific. To think that someone would take advantage of a child like that, and then to add to that the fact that other people were allegedly there, witnessed it, and did nothing, that's just disgusting.
It really makes you question the whole environment. What allowed this to happen? And the theme of drugging and assault that comes up repeatedly. Another example, a musician from North Carolina, she claims that in 2022 she was drugged at a Combs party and then raped. She said she felt trapped inside her body.
It's just disturbing to see that pattern emerge, like it wasn't just a one-off, a possible tactic being used over and over.
Yeah, and it's not limited to women either. We've got men coming forward too. One lawsuit involves a former actor who claims that back in 2001, he was drugged and raped by Combs.
Wow.
Yeah. He says Combs' bodyguard held him down. Another man alleges he was assaulted by Combs during a Ciroc vodka launch party in 2022.
So this is not a gender-specific issue at all.
No, it's really important to emphasize that.
And every week it seems like there's a new lawsuit with even more shocking details.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier accusations involving minors. One that really stood out to me. A lawsuit filed in October 2023 by a man who claims that he was just 10 years old.
Yeah, I remember that one.
When the alleged assault happened. Says during a trip to Los Angeles, Combs drugged and sexually assaulted him. Even threatened to harm his parents if he told anyone.
Yeah, that one was particularly bad. A child that young. It just shows a complete lack of any kind of moral compass.
Right. It really makes you wonder about the culture of the music industry. Was there a deliberate effort to protect Combs? To cover this up? It's hard to believe that this level of alleged abuse could have gone unnoticed for so long.
That's what Buzbee's getting at when he talks about enablers. It points to a system that might have prioritized profit and reputation over everything else.
And it's not just Buzbee. Music producer Rodney Little Rod Jones. He filed a lawsuit back in February 2023, alleging that he was coerced into having sex with prostitutes that Combs had hired. He also claims that Combs threw these sex trafficking parties.
Oh, wow, I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, where underage women and drugs were present.
So this goes even further. This isn't just individuals coming forward with their own stories. This is starting to look like a much bigger organized situation.
Yeah, a potential criminal enterprise. And those are serious charges.
This could lead to something much bigger, like a reckoning within the music industry. Kind of like what happened with the #MeToo movement in Hollywood.
It's possible we could be on the verge of a massive shift.
And legally, things are getting interesting, too. There was a case where a federal judge ruled that one of Buzbee's clients, this woman, claimed she was raped at 19. She'd have to reveal her identity publicly for her case to go forward.
Oh, wow. So she'd have to come out and say who she was.
That's the judge's ruling.
Yeah.
And it highlights how hard it is for victims to come forward.
Absolutely. It's a tough balance, protecting their privacy while also ensuring a fair trial. This case really pushes the boundaries of our legal system.
It does. It brings up so many questions about power, about justice, about holding people accountable.
And we have to remember, behind all of this legal back and forth are real people who've been through something truly awful. Many of them have talked about the emotional toll, the lasting damage they carried for years.
Absolutely. Sexual assault, it can have devastating, long-lasting effects, and we need to do a better job of supporting survivors and creating an environment where they feel safe coming forward.
Yes, 100%. And this case reminds us that sexual assault is not something that just affects a certain group of people. It's a problem in every community. Gender, race, socioeconomic background, none of that matters. It's a societal issue, and we need to address it.
Yeah, it's not enough to just react when these things happen. We need to work on preventing them from happening in the first place.
So how do we do that?
We need to talk about consent, we need to challenge these harmful power structures, and we need to make sure perpetrators are held responsible.
Right. So where are we now? We've got Sean Diddy Combs, this music mogul, facing this huge number of allegations.
Allegations that could take down his entire empire.
His reputation is on the line. The civil suits are probably going to drag on for years.
Yeah.
And that federal sex trafficking case, that could completely change his future.
Yeah, and as more and more information comes out, it just gets more and more complicated. And the impact of this case, it's going to be felt across the music industry and beyond.
This has been heavy, a lot to take in. But we have to confront these issues. We have to face these uncomfortable truths if we want to see real change.
The accusations against Sean Diddy Combs, they've really shaken things up, and we're having to reevaluate everything. What does power mean? What is consent? How do we hold people accountable?
It's a reminder that no matter how wealthy or famous you are, no one is above the law.
Right. And we can't forget about the alleged victims. We need to keep fighting for a culture of consent, where survivors are believed, where they get the support they need, and where this type of abuse is simply not tolerated.
Now, let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about this docuseries that Curtis 50 Cent Jackson is making. It's supposed to delve deeper into these allegations against Diddy, might shed some new light on everything that's going on. So 50 Cent and this docuseries, it's a whole other layer on top of everything we've already talked about.
It really is. 50 Cent, Curtis Jackson, he's always been a controversial figure.
He's definitely not afraid to speak his mind.
No, not at all.
And he said he's going to explore these accusations against Diddy in depth.
Yeah.
What kind of impact do you think that could have?
Well, it's going to bring a lot more attention to this whole thing. 50 Cent, he's got a huge platform. People listen to him.
Right.
So this is going to reach a much wider audience.
Do you think he'll come out and say Diddy's guilty or innocent? Or take sides at all?
It's tough to say. He hasn't really given too many details about what the docuseries will actually cover. He's said he wants to give a platform to the alleged victims. But then he's also said he has some doubts about some of the claims.
So maybe he's trying to go in with a neutral approach.
I think so. Present all the sides.
Let the viewers decide for themselves.
Yeah, which is probably the best way to handle something like this. It's a really sensitive topic.
And 50 Cent, well, he's known for being a little more outspoken.
Right. It'll be interesting to see how he navigates that.
And then there's the fact that he's going to donate all the money from the docuseries to sexual assault survivors.
Yeah, that's another twist.
Is that genuine? Or is that trying to profit off of something terrible? It's hard to say.
I'm sure people are going to have a lot of opinions about that.
They are.
But it does get people talking, and this is a case that needs to be talked about. We need to look at this from every angle.
So whether he means well or not, this docuseries could really spark a wider conversation, not just about the music industry.
Right, about sexual assault, about accountability in society as a whole.
This is a big moment. The music industry's got to confront some really tough issues.
And it's not just the music industry. This could have a ripple effect across entertainment, media, everywhere.
This has been a lot, this whole deep dive. We started with these accusations, and now we're talking about a potential cultural shift.
Yeah. And through it all, we have to remember the human cost. These alleged victims, they've been carrying this pain, sometimes for years and years, and the impact this has had on their lives.
It's a really good point. Behind all the legal stuff, the headlines, the big names, are real people who've been hurt.
And the legal system, it's going to decide guilty or innocent. But the conversation we're having now, that's just as important. We're talking about power. We're talking about consent. And about the systems that allow abuse to happen.
This isn't just about Diddy. It's about the whole music industry. It's about celebrity culture. It's about how we as a society respond when these kinds of things come to light.
This is a turning point. We have a chance to change things, to really shift how we think about power and how we hold people accountable. And we can't let that momentum fade.
This has been a heavy deep dive, but a really important one. The accusations against Diddy, they remind us that nobody's above the law. Doesn't matter how rich or famous you are.
And we have to hold people accountable for their actions.
We can't forget about the alleged victims. We've got to keep fighting for a culture of consent, where survivors are believed, where they get the support they need, and where this kind of abuse is never tolerated.
That's what we should all be striving for.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a journey. And remember, knowledge is power.